Hola, buenos días. ¿Me pueden oír? Sí, muy bien. Aunque mi papá es argentino, voy a dar el discursito en inglés porque todo lo que tiene que ver con blockchain no me sale muy bien en castellano, ¿vale? So I'm going to talk to you about sustainability and blockchains. And at some point in time, people might think that that is a bit controversial, right? On the one side, you try to, you spend lots of energy, for example, and on the other side, you're trying to do something sustainable. You might have read lots about that in the press. So I want to talk to you about two trends that I think are quite relevant. The first one is, of course, sustainability overall, right? And even though these numbers might be a little bit outdated, in 2020, there were about 6,000 funds that were focused on this sustainability topic. In 2022, there was still about $2.5 trillion that were managed by these funds. And you can see that we don't know where it's going to go next, but there's a part of me that thinks that this might continue. Especially because Asia, which is a big region, hasn't really caught up to it. Yeah? You can see the colors blue and dark blue are Europe and US respectively, and the little bit of red is what's coming from Asia. I don't know whether you've seen these two gentlemen, but the one on your left-hand side used to run sustainable investing for HSBC and then had to leave because he made some comments that were not in line with what the bank wanted from a head of sustainability investing. But he kind of gave us a bit of a wake-up call, yeah? Because he said, well, maybe we need to think about ESG a little bit differently. Shortly after, this other gentleman wrote a paper, Alex Edmonds, and said, well, maybe ESG has come to an end. But what he meant by that is that perhaps ESG activity or ESG metrics and measurement cannot be so categorical, but that they have to be a little bit more like the work of an equity analyst, where you can reflect your own preferences. Yeah? It's not a hard, this is good, this is bad, but what matters to me, and then I make decisions on the back of that. He's since then published another great paper on what he calls rational sustainability. So if you're into that topic, highly recommend to read that. The second trend that I want to talk to you about is, of course, crypto and blockchain. And we don't really know, right, where markets are going. This is a chart that shows the total market capitalization of cryptocurrencies a few days ago. And we don't know, is it going to continue to rise or fall, or how steep that curve is going to continue to rise. But one thing I would say is that effectively everything's in baby shoes. You know? People are still experimenting. There's no real adoption of blockchain in the world today. People are just trying and experimenting. But I do believe that there's reason to think that blockchain will be widely adopted. And that's for two reasons. Number one, people who are now joining the workforce, they don't really want to work for large corporations anymore. They want to do their own thing. So they need a platform to launch their own entrepreneurial venture, and blockchains are very good for that. The second kind of reason for me to believe that blockchain is probably going to be a big deal in the future is that over the last 10 to 15 years, all of the successful business models that we have seen rise are all platform business models, right? You think about Airbnb and Uber and all of these kind of companies. They're all based on a platform business model. So blockchains are effectively platforms. So you combine these two things, I think lots and lots of activity will happen. Blockchains are organized in a very, very different fashion, not very much like traditional companies. I'm trying to depict a traditional company on the left-hand side, and then how blockchain ecosystems looks like on the right-hand side. And you can see that one is very hierarchical, and one is much more centered around, well, it's not really centered around anything. It's made up of community and technology, and also incentives and mechanism design that bring people together. So that's interesting to keep in mind, because in a blockchain ecosystem, you don't always have a clear separation between who is the customer, the producer of the service, the investor. Yeah, that can all be commingled to some extent. So another thing, in case you haven't heard the term, is this idea of a smart contract platform. Right? You can think of a smart contract platform as an operating system that other people can use to build their individual products and services on top of. And that platform basically guarantees the settlement of transactions. And probably the most famous one is Ethereum. Then, of course, we also have others like VeChain and Polkadot in this space. I think about 120 of them in total at the minute in the markets of various sizes. So why is it important to understand these different smart contract platforms or blockchain platforms in principle? Well, it is because if you decide to build something on top of a blockchain, then you create a dependency, right? It's like moving into a new house or, I don't know, buying a new phone. Suddenly, your activities will be limited or can be turbo boosted by the underlying platform. And choosing carefully can therefore help you manage the risks that are associated with these platforms. And why is that all important? All good? Oh, now you can't hear me. Can you guys hear me? OK, cool. Why is this all important? There are different perspectives. I guess one is the sound off? Should I? No, it works. OK, cool. Maybe I stay closer to here. Oh, 1 second. Oh, okay. Does that work? Yeah. OK. OK? All right. OK, thanks. So now I got two things in my hand. Let's see how that goes. So why is this important? Because, of course, investors care about it, right? And you have this investor perspective. This is data from a Fidelity report that suggests that 81% of all of the people that they asked are planning to do something in the world of cryptocurrencies and blockchains. Like that? Oh, yeah, better. Thank you. You're the superstar. Thank you. OK. Why does it also matter in terms of capital allocation? This is a very interesting chart that basically suggests that only 7% of all of the pension funds that participated in that survey say that they're going to do anything over the next, I think, 2 years' time or so. And that's very little, because these guys are very big, right? They manage an aggregate of about 50 trillion US dollars. So there's lots of capital that is probably going to move into this space. So how can these guys decide what to buy? That's a fair question, right? So in absence of any sort of established valuation model, all they can do is look at the different characteristics of these platforms, which is what I was going to talk about to you now. But before we do that, one other thing that is kind of interesting, and I'll talk more about what these characteristics are, but we can see that as of when is the survey done? I think 2 years ago. Basically, investors didn't really care about sustainability of blockchain platforms. Yeah? Yes, of course, the biggest one, Bitcoin, is using lots of energy. That's questionable. If you can do the same job with less energy, you should. Ripple, another very big cryptocurrency platform, has a very highly concentrated ownership structure, which I'll talk more about as well, also not very optimal. And Binance Coin, which is also very huge, has very few validators. Validators are these entities or computers that check whether data should be immutably added to the blockchain. So it seems like this investor community doesn't really care about these sustainability characteristics yet. Okay? So then the question is, how can we assess these sustainability characteristics? And here are some of them that I think are important. Okay? So of course, you want your platform to be environmentally friendly. And I think that's already accepted today. And I think that it's probably fair to say that most of the activity, entrepreneurial activity especially, takes place on platforms that are already reasonably environmentally friendly. I think there are some other characteristics that I clubbed together. Oh, okay, cool. Thanks. There's some other characteristics that are also important, and I've tried to list them here. For some strange reason, the people in the crypto community don't value them very much. At least that's what I pose. You tell me if I'm wrong. But stability, for example, right, should be common sense that your platform should be stable and shouldn't fall over all the time. And yet we have some of these platforms, like, for example, Solana, that just had 5-hour outage, and repeatedly so. So I think this stability matter is not really understood all that well. Fairness is another big topic that I will talk about a little bit more in detail as well. If a platform systemically disadvantages some users, that's probably not as good as if everyone's treated equal, right? Then I'm going to talk about low and predictable pricing and governance and privacy concerns as well. So this is where I should correct the joke about my slides with the white background, because I have lots of words on my slides, and I think probably everyone else in this conference that focuses much more on design has black background, but I hope that you still find the session reasonably entertaining. So when it comes to environment, I think we already talked about energy usage, and to that is, of course, connected the CO2 emissions that a platform creates. And I think what we should do as entrepreneurs or builders is pick platforms that hopefully do not waste energy. Right? If you can do a job, for example, settle a transaction using very little energy, then that's what you should do. With regards to stability, I think it's important, like for any other IT service, that you figure out how to measure your availability, right? And effectively, it boils down to this availability measure, uptime divided by uptime minus downtime. And why is stability so important? Well, because lots of regulators in the world have very strict views on how long, for example, a financial service can be off, right? So if you look at banks in Singapore, where I live, I think their yearly allowance for downtime is about 4 hours, right? 4 hours only. If you have any big issue or any big outage, they'll come after you, right? The regulator will look at you. So if you build your service on top of a platform that is out for 5 hours on a particular day, then you already have no credit left, right, for the rest of the year. So this is important. Next, I want to talk a little bit about fairness, and in connection to that, also about wealth equality. And I mean, in society, we often think about wealth equality as being something positive, and the more distributed wealth is, the better we believe that a society can function. It's perceived to be very bad if there's like few people who have all the money and everyone else has very little, right? So what's interesting about that in the context of blockchains is that you can actually inspect that, right? It doesn't cost very much to look or to calculate what the distribution of wealth is. And most of these platforms today are not doing very well. Yeah? So that is something that you should inspect when you try and make a decision. What's also interesting from an investor perspective is that platforms that have a wider distribution of wealth actually outperform in the markets. Yeah? And there's some research that I've been pushing for with a professor in Cornell and another co-author in Tsinghua University. And we find that there's about a 2.2% kind of outperformance compared to the regular market. Yeah? This is just a chart that shows exactly that. Where large token holders decrease, the premium increases, and where the small token holders go up, of course, the premium increases as well. Yeah? There's a second aspect to fairness that I briefly want to talk about, and that is what I call here the ease of front-running. And front-running is basically a practice where sometimes, especially those actors that are supposed to provide or to secure the integrity of the blockchain ledger, insert transactions into the blockchain that give them some unfair advantage over the average user. Yeah? And we found that if the time between blocks, between new block creation, is smaller, then of course this unfair activity is more difficult to execute. And again, we find in the markets that there is a premium associated to platforms where this unfair activity is more difficult to execute. Okay? And this is the chart that you can also see that it's kind of trending in the right direction. Okay. Another thing that is surprisingly not looked at the minute at all is low and predictable pricing of your blockchain platform. Yeah? When, of course, you have to pay for anything to be transacted on the platform. And if you build a business on top of a platform, you want to be able to predict how much you're going to pay for that service. Right? Otherwise, how are you going to create your business plans? Impossible. And yet, if you look at the variance of the pricing for transaction processing on Ethereum, you can see that the price varies between 91 cents and 68, almost $69. That's huge, right? These are daily averages, by the way, so the actual variance can be even bigger. But that is already something that is very concerning. I don't know whether you remember, but there was a big NFT launch a few months ago, and then the gas prices on Ethereum skyrocketed, and people paid thousands and thousands of dollars just to mint those NFTs. Wouldn't it be nice if an NFT platform would be able to launch and then everyone would just pay a few cents? Because effectively, these transaction platforms are utilities, right? They should be priced in a very stable and low kind of way. All right. I wonder how we're doing in time, because I don't have a clock, but I hope we're good. I briefly also want to talk about the governance of blockchains. So the governance depends on many, many different things, but also on the number of validators or the number of independent computers. Oh, there's a time. Excellent. That help to run this platform. Right? And then you have some platforms where you have hundreds of these validators, and that's good because it's hard for them to collude. But then you have others where there's only 8 or 9. I remember this blockchain called the Ronin blockchain. Ronin blockchain at some point in time got hacked, and effectively at the time where that incident happened, they had 9 validators. And if I'm not mistaken, those 9 validators were run by only 4 different companies or something like that. Very, very low number. So you have this risk that people collude and write something into the blockchain that they shouldn't. So looking at this number of validators is definitely something I would recommend if you have to choose which platform you want to go for. This is a little plug for my new book that I'm writing with my dear co-author, Sandy Oh. Many blockchain platforms choose to use a DAO, or a decentralized autonomous organization, to govern the platform, right? To take decisions where some actors can perhaps propose something, and then other actors can vote on these proposals. So watch out for that book. I think we are due to submit the manuscript end of May. So then 2-3 months later, hopefully, the book will be out. One thing that is super controversial at the minute is privacy. You got lots of regulators on the one hand side that say blockchains can't have privacy protection because we need to see everything because there are many bad guys that we need to chase. And on the other hand, in Europe, for example, you have laws like GDPR that protect the private data of individuals and also companies. So I always wonder, how do you get these things, how do you merge these two requirements, right? And in my mind, the answer is cryptography. And we all need to probably learn a little bit more about cryptography because there are many cryptographic principles that we can use to protect, on the one side, the data privacy requirements of individuals, but also enable, for example, governments to check for certain things. Yeah? So this is very exciting. If I leave you with one thing, is maybe we should all learn more about cryptography. I'm a finance guy, so I definitely have room for improvement there, but and probably lots more tech people. Who has a computer science degree in the room? Anyone? Okay, so you guys all know a lot more than I do. But it's good for all of us to understand this better. We talked a lot about the operating system, or the kind of basic blockchain, or some people call it layer 1 blockchain. I want to talk about the ability to create sustainable solutions on top of these platforms now. And there are two examples that I briefly want to mention. I have no affiliation to either of them, but one is Energy Web and one is ReC. So the key message of this slide is, once you've figured out how sustainable your base layer is, you can also think about whether your product or your service should have something to do with sustainability. Okay? And the first use case is Energy Web Foundation that has been around for quite a few years, also operates reasonably globally. And what they basically do is they help entities with that whole idea of the energy transition. They have 3 different products that I've tried to highlight here a little bit. Green proofs that basically help companies to document their decarbonization pledges. They also have what they call asset management, which deals with tracking of provenance of all sorts of equipment that has to do with energy transition. And they also have this data exchange where basically you are able to, as the name suggests, exchange data that has to do with these electricity markets. Yeah? That's one interesting example. I would encourage you to also investigate a little bit more if that's what you're interested in. We also have ReC, which is a platform that is actually built on WeChain. And their mission is effectively to make sure that water bodies, oceans and lakes included, obviously, are plastic-free eventually. And there's some interesting sort of interim successes that they've already achieved. They've grown their team quite a bit, about 100% from when they started. They also have helped to remove almost 2.5 million kilograms of plastic from these water bodies. And what's also interesting is that they use tokenomics to incentivize their user base to contribute to this exercise of removing plastic from water. So we're almost at the end. Thank you for your attention. With these sessions, you never know, right? Will there even be anyone, especially when it's the first one on the day? So thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it. Just to make sure we recap real quick, we looked at 6 different sustainability metrics this morning that you can use to assess blockchains, right? Environmental friendliness, stability, fairness, low and predictable pricing, governance, and then also privacy. Remember that these smart contract platforms that we mentioned are like the operating systems for peer-to-peer commerce that will probably be much more important in the future than it is today. 10 out of the top 20 cryptocurrencies are smart contract platform related platforms, okay? And they have just short of half a billion, that could not be, half a trillion in market cap. In my mind, only sustainable blockchain platforms can actually be adopted. So we're back to, where's the adoption coming from? Well, if it's not sustainable, I think the platform will be very, very hard to adopt. Because users become more sophisticated, then they will pay attention to these things, even if they don't today. And I guess the two case studies that I've shown you, they demonstrate that sustainability can not only happen at this base layer, but also at the sort of application layer on top of it. Now, the clock says I have another minute, but I think I'll leave you here. Thank you for your attention this morning. And yeah, if there's any questions, I'll probably hang around for a little while. Feel free to chat me up. Thank you so much.